Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's another Wednesday technical forum, weekly technical forum sponsored by Love My Tool. And we're live today once again. So today we have a very interesting guest, very special guest, only because we recently added a very interesting sponsors. I think all of us here who are entrepreneurs are used to knows how to divide the world into content creators, service providers, and capital providers. So most of our sponsors are one way or another content providers in the sense that they build boxes or they create software solutions and so forth. But our community doesn't survive just on content. We need people to provide service, provide platform, provide community. Tim and I are kind of both. We're content creators. Paul and Tim and I and other writers, we write our articles, but at the same time, we do provide service. We create a community for our friends out there working in the IT world. And similarly, our newest, one of our new sponsors is a company by the name of UBM, which most of you might not know, but it's actually the parent company that owns a very important show, a very important venue for our industry, which is Interop. And representing UBM and representing Interop today is our new friend, Andrew ConryMurray, who's the Director of Content and Community. Good morning, Drew.
Hi, Denny. How you doing?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I'll come back to you in a minute, and let me go ahead and introduce the rest of the panel. We have Chris Bihari, who actually is a content provider. He's a vendor, and he represents a company by the name of Garland Technology. And if you don't know, you should know. It's one of the premier tab manufacturers. Hi, Chris.
How you doing, Denny?
Welcome back.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be back. I know with a little vacation and summertime travel, it's been busy, so excited to be back on the show.
Well, it's interesting because you were one of the essentially the founding member of the show. I remember you attended, right. You started the first two shows, and so I have to believe that because of your success, you went off and you become too busy for us.
That's right. No. I'm gonna be around for the month of September, so you guys will get sick of me and then ask to go on. Say, Chris, you go on vacation again soon or what?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And then Paul offered. Welcome. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Denny.
Yeah, you look nice and rested.
Yeah. Well, it's my wife. On the last show I was on, I got so hot. My wife said I look like a tomato. So we'll see what happens today. Hopefully, I'll manage to keep my cool.
I think she said you look like a ripe tomato. So
yeah, probably.
There's a message in that, I think.
Yeah.
And Tim, talk about ripe tomato. Hi, Tim.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, so we're here to give Drew a hard time. So let's get ready for that. Hi, Drew. Welcome to the show again. Before we talk about Interop and Interop New York specifically, and also about your background, give us an overview of UBM. I know you've been with UBM for quite a while, probably at the time when UBM acquired Interop. Give us just a quick summary of what UBM is and what you have been doing for them.
Sure. So UBM is actually based out of London. It's a publicly traded company in London. But it's as you mentioned, folks might not have heard of it, but it's a company that owns a lot of well-known brands in the United States, including the Interop conference, the Black Hat conference, which just finished last week in Las Vegas, and a lot of IT media brands, including Information Week, Network Computing, Bank and Insurance Systems, and other publications that focus on the IT industry.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, UBM is definitely I put them in the content provider category for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what have you? How long have you been with UBM?
I've been with UBM in various incarnations for about 13 years now.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So what are you passionate about in the context of working for UBM?
Yeah, I'm passionate about the communities that UBM builds. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Network Computing and Information Week, which I've written and edited for, we had communities of IT professionals that we're, you know, trying to serve with great content, and that's the spirit I'm bringing to Interop as well. But in a live context as opposed to just online.
Mm-hmm. And
So it's
during that
building
time,
a community of folks interested in IT and having to get stuff done.
what give us the inside story, because a lot of us know about Interop, but we only know it from the outside. And you being in the inside, um, I remember UBM acquired Interop in sort of the mid 2000s, right? I
Yes.
kind of remember that. So it's almost not quite 10 years, but it's getting close. Just give us an idea of how Interop has evolved over the time that UBM become its parent, and you also, since you haven't been involved with Interop until recently, and you were kind of looking at it from the outside as well, but with the inside context. Tell us about that.
Sure. So I remember as a reporter for a bunch of IT publications going to Interop before the company that I worked for owned it, and it was always a great spot to meet folks, to catch up with a whole bunch of vendors, to talk to customers. You could just do so much in one place. So Interop was really valuable to me on the reporting and writing side. Now that I'm inside the system, and I've been with Interop about a year now, I see it as a great place to connect with your peers. That's what we're trying to do with Interop. I think under UBM's leadership, we're transforming it not just from a go to a show, walk around a show floor, and see some products, which is great, but we also want to serve you like really fantastic, useful content so that you can come and spend a few days learning, interacting with your peers, and also having some fun.
Mm-hmm. And what does the director of content and community do for Interop? And I assume you do everything except booking the beautiful girls, right?
That's right. Yeah, we're trying to get away from the booth babe thing. My role is to bring the content to the show. So we've got more than 100 sessions. We've got day-long and half-day workshops where you can get hands-on training. The speakers, the keynote presenters who come onto the main stage. That's my primary role. It's to bring really smart folks, people that are respected in the IT community, to the Interop show so that folks can learn and share with them. Mm-hmm. My other role is to, throughout the year, help build that community offline, outside the live events. So I'm continuing to write for Information Week, to work through the community through the website, and also find other ways to reach out to folks like through your program.
Mm-hmm. Now, most of us who are familiar with Interop, and Chris Bahari, by the way, is a typical example of a vendor, and Chris and I used to. We do a lot of business over the phone and on net meetings and so forth. But we definitely meet once a year at the show. That's really where we maintain a relationship with each other. So Interop is the place where we do that, and so everybody understands that Interop Las Vegas is a must-go event. But when we think about Interop New York, we think of it often as it's just a smaller version of the Interop Las Vegas, which is actually not true. Tell us about Interop New York. It's a standalone show, and it brings something unique to the mix, right? It's not just a smaller version of something else, right?
No, not at all. We do 5 full days in Las Vegas. We also do 5 full days in New York. So the same high-quality content that you get in Las Vegas, we bring the same high-quality content to New York. It's a full show. We have a big expo floor, so where you can come out and meet your vendors, meet suppliers, meet other people. Yeah, it's a full-fledged show. A lot of great classes and courses going on. So it is, in terms of size, a bit smaller than Las Vegas, but it's still a full-fledged show. It's not just sort of a knockoff.
In fact, my own experience is that the New York show, in some way, in terms of meeting customers, is even a more important show, because most of our customers are kind of in that Boston to Baltimore corridor, And
Absolutely.
for them, the New York show is much more accessible to them. And so if you want to meet customer, that's actually the more ideal place, isn't it?
I think it's a fantastic place to meet customers. One, if if part of your target market is the financials, then you need to be at Interop New York. Just looking at the attendee list, we've got folks coming in from American Express, J.P. Morgan, Nationwide Insurance, all the financial communities. Healthcare is a big presence in New York. Education is a big presence in New York. So if those are the folks you're trying to reach, then Interop New York is really important.
I wonder.
And as you mentioned, I mean, I also feel like a lot of shows get held in Las Vegas because it's sort of a nice boondoggle for the team to get out and have a little fun, while they're also doing some other things. New York, if you're there, you're not just coming in to gamble or whatever. You're coming in because you've got some work to do, and so Interop New York is a smart place to do it.
Yeah, but I go to New York for bagels, so what I know.
Well, there you go.
Pastrami sandwiches too, don't forget.
Exactly. Actually, Drew, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a break and kind of bring in a vendor perspective. Chris, kind of listening to what Drew had to say about Interop in general and Interop New York in particular, what's your perspective?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think Interop New York brings in more end users, customers in the corridor. I would kind of relate it to maybe like an RSA in San Francisco that's right in the city. So I think it does bring a different vibe and different group to it because you're bringing in folks that maybe only have 2-3 hours, but they can come down and go to the Javits Center and go to the conference and interact with some vendors and interact with other customers. And so absolutely, it's a different. When you go to Las Vegas, there will be some customers there locally, but generally, people are coming in all remote. So it is different. You're going to get half days. You're going to get people coming in for the full day, and for training to meet vendors, but also to meet mutual customers. So absolutely, the New York City show definitely brings some opportunity for end users to take a break and stop by. But for me as a vendor and just me personally, if I look at why I'm going to Interop, one of the most important things for me, as you mentioned, Denny, is the keeping the connections. Nowadays everybody's running so fast with growing their business or doing their job, and it's nice to know that hey, when I go to Interop, I'm guaranteed to catch up with old friends, business associates, business partners, and what better way to be able to go somewhere for 2-3 days and see 20-30 people who have big impact on your business. And it's tremendous for that. So for me, I look at it as a personal gain. It's awesome. I always have a great time and get a chance to interact with the folks I'm working with on a daily basis, and it's always good to stop too and have a beer and have a little fun too. So it gives you that extra time to do that as well. So
yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that and say if I could, me personally, going to these shows, I almost feel like it's kind of a family reunion because I have a chance to catch up with people in real time that I usually just am dealing with over Twitter or email or the phone or whatever. So it's really, really useful and valuable to have that one-to-one personal connection. Yeah. I think the other thing that's important about a live event is those connections you didn't expect to get. Somebody you bump into in line, or you're sitting next to in a session, or you're having a beer with, and you get to talking and you find out they're struggling with something that you're struggling with, or they do something that can help you out, you do something to help them out. You just make these sort of kismet connections that you weren't necessarily anticipating. That kind of stuff is really valuable, and that really only happens when you are interacting live and in person.
Right, yeah. And I gotta tell a great Mike Panacki story. So this was probably 5-6 years ago. We were at Interop and we're in line to get lunch, I think it was. And so we're standing in line, and someone's like goes up and says, "Excuse me, are you Mike Panacki?" And it was like the engineer, you thought Mike was the superstar, and like, oh, can I talk to you for a minute? And you thought he was a rock star of packet analysis, and so I just always remember that. I thought it was hilarious. It was great, just the excitement, and people are going there to learn, and it was great to see that Mike has a fan base and some stalkers. So
yeah, well, I think, and Chris, and by the way, Chris did get the intonation right. No one ever say Mike Benaki. They would either say Mike Benaki. Oh, Mike Benaki. So let's come back to Drew. Tell us about Interop New York. Let's just focus on that. Tell us about what you always do at the New York show that you believe you would do better this year, and then also some of the new initiatives, if any.
Sure. Well, in keeping with the meeting your peers thing, one thing that we're doing brand new for New York, it's called the speed networking. So it's a structured program. You can sign up for it. It's absolutely free. And you essentially say, here's the things I'm interested in, specific technologies or problem sets, and then this speed networking system will set you up with other people who have the same interests or the same problems and concerns, get you together, you have a conversation, you talk about, you share, swap ideas, swap solutions, give each other feedback on what you're seeing out in the market, and then you move on to somebody else and have another discussion and get some more ideas and exchange information. So it's a sort of intense, structured way to make those connections that otherwise kind of happen randomly. That's a whole new initiative for New York. We're really one thing that we get for feedback is help me find other people who are struggling with the same things I am. So this is our one of our efforts to make that happen. I think the other thing that we're doing new and trying it out in New York is people come to New York or Las Vegas, they spend 2, 3, 4, even 5 days with us, and we throw a lot of information at them, a lot of content, a lot of stuff, intense classes, intense hands-on training. We also want to make sure people are having some fun. So the biggest thing we're doing is having Seth Meyers. He just hosted the Emmys earlier this week. He's going to be one of our keynote speakers at the show. So we thought we'd have a little fun, kick back and relax a little bit. He's going to do a comedy set for us in addition to all the other great content. So it's part of an effort to make the show fun while also useful and productive.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
And we'll drill down on some of the content in a minute. But one of the things that I'm always very impressed and grateful about Interop is that even though the show is dominated by some of the major players, many major players, the show itself is actually quite friendly to startups, to entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
You have you have Startup City, you have, and then also, as a startup is uncommon to be able to get into the Interop net, but you do have something else. You do have a kind of a playground. You do have what is that called? The lab, right?
Yes, that's right.
Where you let where it's much more democratic. And you are having some of that at New York this year, right? Something has to do with SDN?
Yeah, so there's two things. We're doing an SDN lab as part of the Interop net this year in New York. So we're essentially, we invited SDN vendors, folks who are selling SDN products, to come in, and in the spirit of Interop's early days with Dan Lynch and the TCP protocol and making sure stuff actually works when you plug it in together, we're having these SDN vendors essentially build a test lab and start running their stuff, and we'll do it live on the show floor, and folks can come by and get tours and ask questions and see how this stuff really works. We want to do this with SDN because it's obviously one of the hottest topics in networking right now. A lot of folks hearing about it, a lot of questions about what it's supposed to do, how it's supposed to work. So we figured the SDN lab was a great way to actually put stuff together and see what happens in a live situation. Mm-hmm. And also referencing startups, something that we started just this past Las Vegas show and we're doing now in New York is called the Startup Hot Seat. I invite 4 startups in the technology industry that are focused on the enterprise as opposed to consumer, and have them give presentations to the Interop audience. So for one, it's great for the startups because they're getting in front of core customers, and it's great for attendees because they're getting to hear some new ideas from innovative companies that might not be able to get their voice heard otherwise.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's
I
fantastic.
still remember the year you guys brought Mr. T in. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. That was interesting.
The only person could stand there and say, "Hey, you fool, come here."
So that's where you learn how to do that, Tim.
I go to Interop because I'm so old now. I go to see if anybody that I know is still alive, and so it's got other benefits besides just no. Interop is just. I've taught with Mike several times, and I've done my own stuff there. And like I said, the only problem I had last Interop is I couldn't get around. So, but it's just incredible, and it's really breathtaking. I mean, if you get to Interop, never tell me afterwards or anybody that you couldn't find something. That was your fault, man, because there's stuff everywhere. There are people everywhere. They'll talk to you. It's a great place to exchange ideas, and I'm a big fan of it. Always have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and speaking of Mike Pinocchi, he's doing some workshops at Interop New York. So if you're a Mike Pinocchi stalker, come on down.
Mm-hmm.
I know too much about Mike, so I can't talk about him.
That could be a sidebar conversation.
And Drew, just to remind our viewers, when is Interop New York going to be held?
From September 29th to October 3rd at the Javits Center in New York.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what? How do they when they register for the show? How does it work? How does the mission work?
Sure, there's a variety. If you go to interop.com and click on register now, you'll see all the passes and prices. You can buy a full 5-day pass. You can buy 2 days just to get to the workshops. You can go for 3 days where you get access to like 1 hour classes and sessions, plus access to the expo floor, which is where all the vendors set up, as well as the keynotes. We also have an entirely free pass where you can get access to the Thursday keynotes and the show floor, although you'll miss out on all the great sessions and workshops, so I'd advise another option.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about doing some kind of thing with Love My Tool or other media outlets saying, hey, we'll give you one total pass that you can give away to somebody? I know that we used to do that years ago.
That's a great idea, and I will take it back to my team and we'll talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll figure out some way to put an article up and then have people send in an email that says, I want to go to Interop because, or what does Interop mean to me, and you guys choose the best one.
Sure.
And they get a pass. That's just my
Mm-hmm.
idea, I think, to get more people engaged.
Mm-hmm. Or they go and they have to write about it, right?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That's too expensive then. Yeah. Hey, Paul. You kind of have some connection to Interop. Once upon a time, Interop was in London, wasn't it?
I thought it was going to be in London last year, and I've got muddled, and I was going to go, but there was a reason why I couldn't go, and I can't remember. Is that true, Drew? Was there an Interop in London last year?
Yes, we do have an Interop in London, Tokyo, and I believe Mumbai.
Yeah, I thought so. I had a question for you, actually. With so many channels of information bombarding us now, how is the attendance holding up at events like Interop? Do you still attract good audiences? Is it declining? What's the trend?
Yeah, our trend is good. We're meeting all our numbers. I think we had 12,000 plus at Las Vegas, and we're on track for around 5,000 or so at Interop New York, those are good numbers. That's what we want to see. Yeah, I mean, it's always getting people to come to a live event is hard because it's an investment in time. So we do everything we can to make that investment worthwhile, and based on the feedback we're getting, people are finding it useful. So, but you're right. There's so many channels and ways to get information.
What I find, Paul, is that I feel the same way, right? Which is, well, you can get information on the internet, so why bother go to a place? But you'd be surprised how, I mean, well, actually, you're not surprised. You know how busy our customers are. And just because they're bombarded doesn't mean that they don't build up a defense mechanism.
No,
yeah.
I do think I was interested in Drew's view on that, because I do think that's true. I mean, I look at things like online courses, for example. There's so many free online courses now, and yet still people want to book into classrooms in dedicated time, which is set aside for them to do training. And I think that's also true in shows, and it's interesting to hear that those numbers are still holding up well.
Yeah, I think it's because, I mean, honestly, if you're taking a course that's free, you may not be necessarily giving it your full attention or effort, but when you've invested in something, you need to get something out of it.
And so more importantly, you are getting a pass from your company.
Yeah.
Your company actually set aside time for you to go someplace else, and they will bother you less, right? And so you can actually free up that time to do things in a more focused way. So Drew, we're coming up to the half-hour mark. I want to know more about you. I think our viewers also want to know more about you. And you mentioned at the top of the show that you have written, you're an author, you write for the industry and so forth. So give us a perspective of the evolution of an industry in the last 5 years, and what you think are the stuff that's interesting, and specifically, what do you think we should be doing at Love My Tool to better serve our community?
The industry, I mean, the one constant is change, right? In my time as a reporter and writer, I always felt like, okay, I've sort of got this subject down, and then suddenly some new innovation would come along, and I'd like, okay, I got to start all over again and get back on that learning curve. But my own impression is that learning curve now feels accelerated. That first server virtualization came along and started changing the way people deployed applications and managed compute, and virtualization then started leaking into the storage industry. Now virtualization's hitting the network. The network's kind of the last piece that needs to catch up as everything gets, has to be deployed faster, more scalable. So it feels like the pace of change, the acceleration is so fast. And frankly, the stakes are higher. If you build an app and send it out to customers and it fails for whatever reason, then you've lost those customers. So, the first time you do something, you've really got to do it right. I feel like the pace of change is faster and the stakes are higher in finding and keeping and acquiring customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, last week one of our sponsors did a wonderful lecture on the basics, the fundamentals of TCP/IP, and we have the 7-layer model of how the internet is built. Mm-hmm. And I often think of that as really the skill levels of our customers. And I don't mean it better or worse. I meant it mainly as that a few years back, maybe even a decade back, maybe more than that, definitely more than that, is that a lot of customers comes in from more of a very basic level. They start out, really understand packets and wires and so forth from the physical layer, and then they eventually kind of move up to all the way to the application. But I think my own perspective is that more and more of a customer comes in at a much higher level in terms of the knowledge. They know a lot more about the software and so forth, and very often they just never had that education on how the network is built. Is that your observation as well, that most people now tend to be at a very high level?
I think what's happening is that disciplines are finally starting to bleed into one another. I think 5 years ago you could say, I am just a network engineer, or I am just a storage administrator, or I'm just a developer, but you can't get away with that now. The network has to know about the application's workload requirements to provide the best platform for that application to run. Storage has to know how the application is going to hit, and the performance of the storage is going to affect that application. Everything's bleeding together, so the knowledge that you have to have doesn't just sit in your nice little box anymore. You've got to start understanding about other things that maybe 5 years ago you didn't necessarily need to.
Yeah, that's very well said. Paul, is that your observation as well?
Yeah, it is. I'd love to see more of it. I think the industry needs more I think they call them T-shaped people, where they've got a broad knowledge and specialist skills in a particular area. We definitely find that we still do come across people who are very pigeonholed and very constricted in not just what they know about, but their remit. You know, they wouldn't dream of wandering off and talking to a server guy if we're talking to a network person. So I'd love to see more of that, more breaking down of the barriers, because you know, especially with the way the industry is evolving with things as a service, cloud, selective outsourcing, that, you know, very tight siloed approach, it's not going to work. It's now should be dead and buried, and we need a broader approach.
Actually, you know, in a way, if you look across a panel, we have vendors such as Chris. We have you know, experts such as Paul. We have Tim and Drew and so forth. But one thing that kind of unite us all is our belief in building community, not just as an exercise of its own, but really as a way of helping us do what we do, which is to sell product and services, right? Because one of the problems that I think we have seen in going back to what Drew and Paul said is really what I call the knowledge gap, right? A knowledge hole. Everyone has that hole of where somehow it doesn't exist. You know, they know this, but they don't know this, right? And it's very difficult for them to find the time to actually fill up those holes. And it turns out that not having those basic makes it very hard for us to actually sell products. Isn't that true, Chris? That sometimes it is. Chris?
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think it's important to establish the communities and you know, bring knowledge across. I mean, when I look at even going in networks, and you know, I'm down at the physical layer part, right? So you know, on the OSI model, I'm down at layer 1, but I even see it with the, you know, security division and the network division. You know, when you go in these enterprise companies, and you know, there is that foothold where, well, the network people have to do this, the security people have to do this. You know, so different organizations within an enterprise company. So I do agree that you know, bringing, you know, crossing over the lines and getting that expertise, you know, to bleed over is happening, because you know, even at the security and the network level, I think you're starting to see, you know, that coming together as well. And I know in some cases, you know, for sake of checks and balances, you do have to keep some things separate and compliance issues, but you know, I definitely see that. But no, I agree with the community that you're building here, and with Love My Tool, and bringing, you know, people in from different aspects is great, and you know, give everybody's opinions, and I think there's nothing better. That's one of the reasons that I'm in business, is to reach out and get to know people, and build relationships, and expand knowledge, not just in business but personally, and you know, different cultures and everything. So I love it.
And Danny, if I could just kind of build on that point a little bit, one of the things that I'm proud of what we're doing at Interop is, you know, we have strong roots as a networking show, and I'm proud of that. But it's not just about networking. If you come to Interop and you want to learn about cloud, you want to learn about applications, you want to learn about security, you want to learn about IT leadership, we've got tracks dedicated to all of those things, so that if you come to Interop, you're not just going to stay in your little box. We want to expand everyone's knowledge, give you a chance to rub elbows with people outside your disciplines, and take the opportunity to learn things that you didn't know.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think that's really how I want to end the show, which is that I think Tim and I would like to open our arms, extend an invitation to you that we can help you in any way we can to kind of bring awareness and timely attention to some of the contents that you have created for the show. So, for example, next week we will be interviewing Glenn Evans, who's for a long time was an employee of UPM, and he's the chief engineer behind Interop.net for many, many years, even predated UBM, I believe.
That's right.
And this year he's the engineers that put together SDN Lab. So we look forward to having the conversation with him, and to kind of bring awareness to some of the good work that you're doing for Interop New York specifically, and Interop in general. And I think that going forward, we're going to grab every possible opportunity to talk with some of your principals, people like Mike Panaki and other instructors, just to get more and more awareness to the work that you're doing.
Fantastic. Well, I know, speaking for Interop, we're excited to be introduced to the Love My Tools community, and I thank you, Denny and Tim, for giving me the chance to come and talk, and Chris and Paul, I also appreciate you spending the time. It was great to have your input.
Okay, so with that, why don't you go ahead and close the show for us, and one more shout out to our audience, why they should come to New York, the Interop New York then.
Sure, you can go to interop.com, find out about all the great workshops and sessions that we've got going on, and take the opportunity to connect with your peers, find out what they're up to, swap war stories, and see how you can help each other. It's about community, it's about connections, and Interop can help you make that happen.
Yeah, and if I were you out there watching the show, I would definitely try to go through that speed networking thing. All right, thank you, Drew, and thank you, Chris.
Yep,
Welcome
thanks,
back.
Danny. Thanks, Tim. Absolutely.
And,
nice to meet you, Drew.
Yeah,
nice
and
to meet
thank
you,
you, Tim. We'll see you guys next week. Go out there and pick up.
Thanks,
All
everybody.
right.
All right. Bye-bye.